Most men are sold a dream they don't fully understand: marriage as the ultimate proof of love, security, and success. Society tells you, find the right woman, settle down, and your life will be complete. But here's the uncomfortable truth no one openly talks about. In today's world, marriage often exploits men, and many don't even realize it until it's too late. Think about it. Men are expected to provide emotionally, financially, socially, while often receiving far less in return. Your freedom becomes negotiable, your time becomes hers, and your resources become a silent obligation. And yet, society applauds it as doing the right thing. Behind closed doors, many men feel drained, undervalued, and trapped in a system that quietly demands more than it gives. Psychology explains this dynamic. Men are biologically wired to seek commitment and stability, but cultural and social pressures turn that natural desire into a tool that can be manipulated. When the expectations of marriage clash with your personal ambitions, desires, or even emotional health, it becomes less about partnership and more about obligation. Here's the hard truth. If you enter marriage without understanding these hidden patterns, you risk losing your independence, your energy, and sometimes even your self-respect. This isn't pessimism. It's a reality check, a warning to wake up before society convinces you that sacrifice is synonymous with love. 1. The social pressure trap. Marriage is often sold as the ultimate measure of a man's success. From family gatherings to social media, the message is constant: you need to settle down or you're falling behind. Friends boast about their weddings, parents subtly compare your progress to cousins, and society paints men who remain single as immature or incomplete. This relentless pressure can push men into marriage long before they are emotionally, financially, or mentally ready. The danger of this pressure is that it encourages men to treat marriage as a checkpoint rather than a true partnership. Many enter it with a mindset of obligation, thinking that fulfilling social expectations is more important than evaluating compatibility or shared goals. Over time, this can lead to resentment toward the relationship, the partner, and even oneself. Psychologically, this pressure taps into a man's natural desire for approval and recognition. Men are often conditioned to equate success with stability and commitment. When a man feels that his worth is being measured by marital status rather than personal growth, he may prioritize appearances over genuine readiness. This sets the stage for an imbalance where he gives more than he receives, simply because he feels compelled to meet external expectations. Consider a man in his late 20s who has been dating a partner for only a year. His friends are all getting married. His parents constantly ask about when he will settle down, and even colleagues subtly congratulate him when they hear engagement news. Feeling the weight of these pressures, he proposes without fully discussing long-term goals or financial plans. Soon after, he realizes that their priorities clash significantly, leading to tension that could have been avoided if he had resisted the societal push and assessed the relationship on his own terms. The key lesson is that social pressure can cloud judgment. Men must recognize that marriage should be a conscious choice made for personal and mutual fulfillment, not a checkbox to satisfy expectations. Understanding this trap early is the first step toward entering a marriage that respects both partners equally. 2. Financial exploitation. One of the least discussed realities of modern marriage is how financial expectations disproportionately fall on men. Society assumes men will be the primary providers, responsible not only for basic expenses, but also for lifestyle upgrades, family obligations, and unexpected crises. While many marriages are built on partnership in theory, in practice, men often bear the heavier financial burden, sometimes without clear acknowledgement or appreciation. This isn't just about money, it's about control and security. When a man consistently covers bills, gifts, vacations, and social obligations, he may slowly begin to feel trapped. Financial imbalance can shift power dynamics, subtly placing the man in a position where he must prioritize his partner's wants over his own needs or long-term goals. The pressure to provide can also amplify stress, anxiety, and a sense of obligation, turning what should be a loving partnership into a transactional relationship. Understanding this dynamic is crucial. Men must recognize where the line between support and exploitation lies. Clear conversations about finances, boundaries, and mutual responsibility are essential to prevent resentment and loss of autonomy. Without these discussions, the relationship can drift into a pattern where one partner benefits disproportionately, while the other sacrifices silently. Imagine a man who earns a stable income while his wife works part-time. From paying the mortgage and utility bills to funding expensive family trips and covering her personal shopping, he carries the majority of financial responsibility. Over time, he notices that every major decision, from buying a car to vacation planning, defaults to him covering the cost. When he raises the topic of equal contribution, it leads to tension, guilt-tripping, and emotional pushback, leaving him questioning whether he's being unreasonable. This example shows how financial imbalance can quietly exploit men, even in marriages that outwardly appear normal. Financial responsibility in marriage is important, but when it becomes one-sided, it's no longer partnership. It's exploitation. Recognizing these patterns early and establishing equitable agreements can protect both your finances and your sense of self-worth. 3. Emotional labor expectations. Marriage isn't just about sharing bills or chores, it's also about managing emotions. But in many modern marriages, men are expected to handle not only their own feelings, but also their partner's emotional needs. This unspoken demand, often referred to as emotional labor, can quietly exploit men by placing the responsibility of maintaining harmony, managing conflict, and offering constant reassurance squarely on their shoulders. Men are culturally conditioned to be stoic, dependable, and protective, which can make them natural targets for this imbalance. While they're praised for patience and understanding, there's little recognition for the mental and emotional effort required to keep a relationship smooth. Over time, constantly adjusting, calming, and emotionally supporting a partner without reciprocation can lead to frustration, burnout, and a sense of invisibility. The problem isn't in caring or supporting your partner. It's in doing so at the cost of your own emotional health. Men need to understand that their feelings are just as valid and that maintaining a balance between giving and receiving emotional support is essential to a healthy marriage. Setting boundaries and encouraging mutual emotional responsibility can prevent resentment from building quietly over the years. Consider a man whose wife frequently returns home stressed or upset from work. He spends hours listening, offering advice and calming her down, often putting aside his own need to decompress after a long day. While he's attentive and supportive, his concerns are rarely acknowledged, and when he tries to share his own struggles, he is told to handle it or stop overthinking. Over time, he begins to feel emotionally drained and undervalued, realizing that he's been carrying the weight of both partners' emotional well-being. Understanding emotional labor in marriage is vital. Men who accept these expectations without limits risk losing their emotional stability and self-respect. A balanced relationship requires both partners to contribute not just financially, but emotionally, giving and receiving support equally. 4. Loss of freedom and autonomy. One of the less talked about realities of marriage is how it can slowly chip away at a man's freedom and autonomy. When you're single, You make decisions based on your own priorities, desires, and schedule. You choose how to spend your time, what to pursue, and when to relax. Marriage changes that dynamic, often subtly at first, until you realize that your choices are now constantly influenced by another person's expectations and preferences. Many men experience this as a shift in identity. Activities that once felt natural, going out with friends, pursuing hobbies, or traveling spontaneously, now require discussion, compromise, or outright approval. Even small decisions, like what to eat or when to go out, can become negotiations. Over time, this can feel suffocating, especially if the balance of autonomy leans heavily toward one partner. The loss of freedom isn't just about physical actions, it's mental as well. Men often feel pressure to anticipate their partner's needs, avoid conflict, and conform to unspoken rules about what a good husband should be. This can lead to suppressed desires, postponed ambitions, and a growing sense that life is no longer entirely their own. The irony is that many men enter marriage seeking partnership, love, and support, only to find themselves navigating a landscape filled with subtle expectations that can limit personal growth. Relatably, think about the evenings you used to spend doing whatever you wanted, gaming, working on a project, or simply relaxing without explanation. Suddenly, those same hours are weighed against responsibilities, plans, or compromises. The spontaneity that once defined your life starts to fade, replaced by a routine that revolves around shared obligations and relational harmony. Recognizing the impact on freedom and autonomy is crucial. Maintaining a sense of individuality, communicating personal needs, and negotiating boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary for long-term happiness. Men who preserve their autonomy while nurturing the relationship are far more likely to feel fulfilled and respected, avoiding the trap of feeling trapped in a life that slowly feels less like their own. 5. Unequal decision-making power. In many marriages today, decision-making is often portrayed as a shared process. But in reality, men frequently find themselves shouldering the majority of responsibility while having less influence over the outcomes. Men are expected to handle major financial choices, career sacrifices, and long-term planning. Yet when it comes to preferences, opinions, or personal desires, their input can be sidelined or questioned. This imbalance can quietly erode confidence and lead to frustration over time. The subtlety of this dynamic is what makes it so dangerous. It's rarely about overt control or malice. Instead, it's the accumulation of small moments where a man's preferences are deprioritized or dismissed. Over months and years, this creates a pattern where he gives more effort, compromise, resources, without the relationship feeling fully reciprocal. The result is a feeling of invisibility and diminishing influence over one's own life. Understanding this isn't about keeping score, it's about awareness. Men need to recognize when decision-making is skewed and find ways to assert themselves without creating constant conflict. Open, honest dialogue and clear boundaries are essential to prevent imbalance from undermining both personal fulfillment and the relationship itself. Take the example of a man planning a major home renovation. He researches costs, designs, and schedules, taking on the responsibility to make it happen. However, whenever he presents his ideas, they are constantly questioned or rejected without constructive alternatives. While he carries the workload and stress, his partner's preferences dominate the final decisions. Over time, he begins to feel that no matter how much effort he invests, his influence on the outcome is minimal, creating frustration and a quiet sense of exploitation. The lesson here is that unequal decision-making power doesn't just affect the relationship, it affects self-respect. Men who fail to recognize or address this imbalance risk feeling powerless in one of the most important areas of their life, maintaining influence asserting preferences, and negotiating responsibilities are not acts of stubbornness. They are essential steps in creating a marriage that respects both partners equally. 6. Psychological manipulation. One of the most insidious ways marriage can exploit men today is through subtle psychological manipulation. This doesn't always mean overt control or obvious abuse. Often, it shows up in the form of guilt-tripping, passive pressure, or emotional nudges that steer a man's choices without him even realizing it. Over time, these small pressures accumulate, shaping behavior, decisions, and even self-perception in ways that benefit one partner more than the other. Relatably, many men notice that their opinions are quietly dismissed, their preferences questioned, or their decisions reframed as selfish. A disagreement might be reframed as evidence that they don't care enough, or hesitation to meet an expectation can trigger guilt for failing to meet a partner's imagined needs. It's subtle, almost invisible to outsiders, but the effect is deeply impactful. Men may start doubting their own judgment, questioning whether their priorities are reasonable, and even changing behavior to avoid conflict rather than out of mutual respect. Psychologically, this taps into men's natural desire to provide, protect, and maintain harmony. Because men are often socially conditioned to solve problems and keep peace, they can be especially susceptible to these forms of influence. Without recognizing it, they may find themselves continuously adjusting, compromising, or overextending themselves to meet unspoken expectations. This manipulation can extend beyond everyday choices into long-term life decisions. Careers, investments, and personal goals may be subtly influenced by what's expected in the relationship, rather than what aligns with a man's own values or ambitions. Over time, the sense of agency diminishes, leaving men feeling that they are less in control of their lives than they thought. Recognizing these patterns is essential for maintaining balance in marriage. Awareness allows men to differentiate between reasonable compromise and undue influence. Healthy relationships require mutual respect and influence, not silent manipulation. By staying conscious of these dynamics and establishing boundaries, men can protect their sense of self while maintaining a strong, equitable partnership. 7. The risk of legal and social consequences. Marriage today isn't just a personal commitment. It's also a social and legal contract with consequences that many men fail to fully understand. Too often, men enter marriage with the belief that love alone will protect them from complications. The truth is far harsher. Failing to recognize the legal and social realities can leave men vulnerable, financially, emotionally, and socially. One uncomfortable reality is that men frequently underestimate the power dynamics embedded in family law. Divorce proceedings, custody battles, and property divisions often favor the partner perceived as more dependent or in need of protection. While laws are meant to be fair, the outcomes can unintentionally exploit men who didn't plan ahead or assert themselves. This isn't about discouraging marriage, it's about waking up to the realities that come with it. Social expectations also play a role. Men are often pressured to be the provider, the peacemaker, and the one responsible for keeping the family together. Yet when problems arise, society frequently expects them to absorb the consequences quietly, while scrutiny often falls on them first. Over time, this imbalance can erode confidence and reinforce patterns where men give far more than they receive, both emotionally and materially. Critically, too many men allow themselves to be passive in these situations. They rely on goodwill or the assumption that love will protect them from issues. The harsh truth is that love alone cannot shield you from legal obligations, societal judgments, or emotional exploitation. Men need to be proactive, informed, and strategic. not just emotionally invested. If you don't wake up and recognize these risks, you're leaving your life, finances, and well-being in someone else's hands. Educate yourself on your rights, communicate clearly, and establish boundaries before problems arise. Taking responsibility for your own protection isn't cynical. It's essential for surviving and thriving in a marriage where both partners are meant to be equals. 8. Reclaiming balance and protecting yourself. By the time many men reach the later stages of marriage, they realize that without conscious effort, the balance of power, respect, and responsibility can easily tip away from them. The good news is that this doesn't have to be permanent. Men can reclaim control over their lives and their relationships by setting clear boundaries, communicating openly, and prioritizing their own well-being alongside their partners. The first step is self-awareness. Understanding where imbalance exists, whether financially, emotionally, or socially, allows men to identify patterns that need to change. Ignoring these signs only reinforces the dynamics that exploit them. Once aware, it becomes easier to address issues without resentment, building silently over time. Next is communication. Men must express their needs and expectations clearly and consistently. This isn't about being confrontational. It's about creating an environment where both partners are accountable and contributions, emotional, financial, and practical, are shared fairly. Mutual respect comes from clarity, not assumption. Finally, maintaining personal growth is crucial. Men who continue pursuing hobbies, career goals, friendships, and emotional development maintain a sense of individuality that cannot be overshadowed by marriage. A healthy relationship supports personal growth